So I will just first quickly take the opportunity of introducing my panelist. So I have Professor Derick Lindquist with me. He's a professor and vice dean of Jindal School of Psychology and Counseling at OP Jindal Global University, Sonipat. He has a rich teaching experience with reputed universities like OP Jindal University, the Ohio State University. He is also known for his interest in research and expertise as he's published various papers on topics like emotion in motion, a three-stage model of aversive classical conditioning, AI in international arbitration, need for the human touch, the rise of AI, machine arbitrators, and human imperfection, to name a few. We welcome you, Professor Derick. Thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
All right. Mr. Dhaval up is next. Mr. Dhaval is the Senior Director of International Student Affairs Cell at Parul University, India. Being the Senior Director for International Student Affairs Cell, he has visited more than 50 plus countries and experienced their culture. He's giving training to the international representatives by traveling offshore by various programs offered by the Parul University, jointly developing logistics and support system for smooth transition of foreign students to India. Under his supervision, guidance of the university, he's been awarded for the Outstanding University in West Zone for highest nationalities in campus at 15th World Education Summit. We welcome you, Mr. Dhaval. Thank you so much for joining in.
My pleasure. Good evening to everyone.
Good evening. And I hope I have met you a lot of times. To the ones who know me, hi, I am Anchita, and the ones who don't know me, I am a career coach at Mindler, and I take up counseling sessions with students. You will see me in webinars, you will see me in ICCC sessions. So yeah, that's what my role encompasses here about. And also, just because the topic today is about what is the scope of psychology degree and what all we can do with psychology degree, I have completed my education only in psychology. So I'm a master's in counseling psychology, if just that helps. All right, let's go about it. Few rules before we start. Please make sure that you have a proper internet connection to smoothly run the webinar. And also, if you are facing any audio or video issues in between, please make sure you check your internet connection again. And yes, the webinar is being recorded. So you will get a recording post this that will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. And the most important announcement that I have for the evening is that we are going to also keep a very close check on all the questions you ask. So this is for all the students out there. So please make sure that you are asking interesting questions. One interesting question will win a 30-minute call with us, wherein we can help you address any of your career-related queries. And we will be announcing the winners on our social media. Perfect. So please also make sure that you're following us on social media, on our Instagram handle, as well as on Facebook and YouTube. Okay, so ready? Let's go ahead. So going ahead and talking right from the basics. What is psychology? Okay. Psychology helps us look at the way people think, act, react, and interact, if I have put that correctly. Our everyday decisions, from where we are, where we go, to what we eat, are influenced by the smallest factors that are hidden from plain sight. The field of behavioral psychology, as well as social psychology, talks about numerous examples of where we are coming from, how we can address our emotions, how we should look at mental health, and many other things, right? But as a subject, if I talk to you about psychology, a lot of students end up asking questions with respect to, okay, is psychology a humanities subject, or is it more like a science subject, right? I see Professor Derick already smiling.
Sure.
So that is something that we will be talking about, and I will definitely come to both of you to get your perspective on this. But how I look at it is that since in India it's like a humanities subject, right? But also let's just demystify this and clear this myth that psychology is not a real science. It is a real science. Okay, what exactly is science then? Okay, something that allows you to do experiments, something that allows you to test hypotheses, something which is objective in nature, which uses empirical methods, which has control and manipulated variables, all of these factors. This is what you call science, right? Psychology relies mostly on all these methods in order to investigate something called as human behavior or animal behavior, right? It utilizes scientific methods to conduct research, which means that variables are controlled and operationally defined as well, right? So I will just go ahead and this is my take on this. Let's hear it from Professor Derick. What do you think? Is psychology a humanities subject or is it a science subject? Professor Derick, can you hear me? I think that.
Well, I would say it's intermediate. So it is a social science.
Okay.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, all good. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Anchita. So again, I think it sort of falls midway. So psychology is a social science, but it is what we refer to as a psychological science, meaning it's rigorous. It uses the scientific method, as you pointed out. So all of the research is based on hypothesis-driven testing. We analyze the data. If the data supports the hypothesis, great. If not, you need to revise your hypothesis and move forward. So it is not physics, but it is a very rigorous discipline. And I do think a lot of the sort of misunderstanding comes from the fact that when people think psychology, they often think, oh, it's like counseling. And that certainly is an important component to it, where you're simply aiding and treating people. You're trying to understand different diseases so you could diagnose and ultimately help them. But even in counseling and clinical psychology, there is research that goes on. And so my background is in research. I did what's called behavioral neuroscience for about 20 years, which is sort of biological psychology, if you will. I was interested in the relationship between the brain and behavior. And that's actually one of the things with our new school, if I can put in a quick plug, our new school, Jindal School of Psychology and Counseling at OP Jindal Global University, will be opening this August. And one of the real emphasis that I have taken is put in a great deal of sort of emphasis on research and empirical methodology. And so I would disagree that it is simply a humanities, right? Now, that's not to disparage humanities. That's great. You know, people study what they will. But psychology, in my estimation, is clearly a science.
Absolutely. So I think what you said is very correct and precise, that it's more like social sciences, right? You cannot just call it science. You cannot just call it a humanities subject. It's like somewhere in between what we're trying to study, because again, it's very subjective in nature because we're talking about the human nature, right? Mr. Dhaval, your thoughts on the same?
Yeah, I would agree with Professor Derick. It's a social science. For me, it's very fascinating to see how this science actually studies something between a physical and a non-physical entity. Like if you consider the brain, it's something physical, but the thoughts, but the emotions and the behavior, these are not physical things. And how this science or the methods, it helps us to understand how this both physical and non-physical entities are being connected, and how every individual have a different set of parameters. If we conduct in a scientific way, we get to know that how every individual have different kind of parameters. That is what has been fascinating me. And since I come from a marketing background, electronics and marketing background, I always use psychology in marketing field while counseling the students, while counseling the parents, and it really helps me to disseminate any kind of information correctly to an individual. So somewhere psychology is, I consider psychology as being, I have been using it in my daily life, in my career, in my professional life, even in my personal lives, where when I interact with my kids, usually we have to deal, as a parent, we have to use a lot of psychology when kids don't listen to us. So I feel that this is a science which has been with us right from the time we take birth, and by the time we use it in our social lives, we use it in our personal lives, even in studies when we are studying. So psychology has a vast implications, and I would rather say that it has lot of future perspectives which were not earlier being discovered, and now we are seeing that there are a lot of opportunities available in psychology. So that's what my take on psychology is.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. I see a lot of questions with respect to whether students can take psychology from just humanities or they can take it as a sciences subject. So for students mostly with CBSE board, please make sure that you see this with respect to your school requirement. However, you can study psychology as a subject and take psychology as a subject along with humanities or commerce or sciences. It's absolutely your right. If I talk about, let's go ahead and talk about the major domains of psychology, right? When I talk about major domains of psychology, what Professor Derick also kind of reflected on is one of the domains is more biological. Biological kind of includes your neurosciences part. It includes your consciousness, sensation, all the studies around it. If I talk about the other domain, which is cognitive, it talks about perception, cognition. We're talking about memory. We're talking about intelligence. We're talking about behavior. When we talk about another domain of psychology, let's say, which is the developmental domain. Developmental domain is where you talk about how does learning and conditioning work? How does lifespan development work? What is language processing, right? And please feel free, Professor Derick, as well as Mr. Dhaval, to please correct me if I'm wrong anywhere and jump in between. The another domain that we also see is social and personality, where we talk about the study of personality, emotion, motivation, gender, and culture. We also talk about the most important domain, which is mental and physical health, what Mr. Dhaval was pointing out. Wherein we talk about abnormal psychology, we talk about therapy, we talk about positive psychology, we talk about health psychology. And for you to be able to pursue psychology at an undergraduation level, so all the questions that I see in the chat box, you can pursue something called as a BA or a BSc in psychology. In India, as such, there is no particular difference between both. Different universities offer different degrees, so it's absolutely okay with respect to whether you are, you have options like BA psychology honors, you have BSc psychology honors, you have BA applied psychology. So all of these are options which are available at undergraduation level, right? So just putting as another question and looking at domains, um, let's understand from both of you and what are your views on this, that what are the different specializations. I have just kind of listed all the domains, but I would want to understand from you what are the different specializations in psychology and which specializations do you think are more relevant in India? Professor Derick, would you want to go first?
Sure, happy to.
Yeah.
Well, I think that you've got it right. The ones that you listed are really what we sort of consider the canonical disciplines within psychology. And historically, those are the disciplines. So that would be, again, developmental, biological, cognitive, social personality. Those are the ones where we really have kind of pure research that goes on. So if you're a developmental psychologist or a cognitive psychologist, many times they are doing actual research, meaning they are going out, designing an experiment, collecting data, analyzing, and really trying to sort of fill in our understanding, right, of both mental processes, our thoughts, our feelings, our drives, our desires, as well as our behavior. And of course, the relationship between the two. How do our mental processes drive our behavior? And again, that's certainly a very important field. On the more treatment-oriented side, again, we have both counseling psychology and clinical psychology. Now, clinical psychology is typically more interested in working with patients with mental illness. So that may be anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, psychosis, if you will, personality disorders, eating disorders, substance abuse, etc. Counseling psychology or counselors also work with patients, but typically they're of more moderate severity. So they may work with married couples, for instance, or they may work with families, or going to work with a group of employees. Mm-hmm. Now, my experience here in India is that there's actually two other disciplines that are actually very prominent and growing in popularity, and that would be industrial organization psychology, which is psychologists working in the world of business and industry. So at an entry-level position, they may come in as like an HR rep. If you get a master's or a PhD, you can do higher level work. But they're really there to kind of assist the employers. That is, they're working with the employees, trying to understand how to optimize their performance, how to ensure they have a good work, personal life balance, etc. The second one would be forensic and criminal psychology. And so in this case, they're working in the world of the criminal justice system. So they may try to understand why people commit crime, for instance, or they may attempt to understand if you're part of a jury, how do juries come to the decisions that they do? So both of those are very popular fields within psychology here in India. Just two more I'll mention real briefly, which would be sports psychology, which is another up and coming field where they're working with teams, so sporting events. They may provide expertise on best practice methods, or on the more biological side, they may assist if there's an injury, such as a concussion. The second one, or the last one I would mention, would be cyber psychology, which is even much newer than all the above, but it's one that really fills an important niche, because if you think how much of our life today is sort of grounded in technology, and particularly social media and all that entails. So cyber psychology is really trying to understand, how do we engage with technology, and how does it impact us both individually and as part of a larger group, be that as a university, be that as a city, or even a nation. And so I think cyber psychology has real importance and value. And again, it's a relatively new field, but it is certainly beginning to grow in prominence, and I expect that will continue into the future.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think you've reflected a lot of areas, and I will come back to you on the areas that you mentioned, because I certainly have questions on this. You talked about forensics, you talked about cyber psychology, you talked about sports psychology, which is very, very upcoming. You talked about industrial and organizational psychology, which is definitely one of the most growing areas. And I think it has been growing ever since the pandemic has started. We have seen that, right? Mr. Dhaval, over to you. What are your views on this?
Okay, so in addition to what Professor Derick mentioned, I'm going to mention some of the fields which are upcoming. One thing is called social media detox. Social media psychology is something which is going to come up as we use a lot of social media. If you just have a look at the age group between 12 to 16, this kind of age group of children are facing too much addictions due to the instant gratification what they are looking for in social media. For example, let me give an example that the Instagrammers, those age groups using Instagrams, like they upload their photo on social media, and if they don't get 21 likes or 51 likes, and they feel that their life is not worth, whatever they have done has no value. This kind of issues are now coming up, especially after this pandemic. During the pandemic, this situation is going up, and I meet one of our clinical psychologists, Dr. Deepal, and she has been quoting numerous cases in this age groups, which is an alarming situation for us, that if we do not counsel this age group, then we are going to have a new kind of psychological issues coming up related to social media, may it be Instagram, may it be Facebook or Snapchat, and you can name all. So this is something which is very interesting area, and I would rather say that it's going to demand a lot of psychological skills along with your social media skills, because you need to actually get into the profiles of your patients, the social media profiles, and you need to analyze them, you need to prepare your notes accordingly. This is something, an upcoming field which I'm looking for, and it's really attractive. As you know, the social media ecosystem is growing every year. The second one, which I feel is, which already Professor Derick mentioned, is I think it's a drugs de-addiction. Something because of the constant pressure, because of constant lockdown, people are becoming abusive. They take too much of drugs, too much of alcohol. So these things are also has disturbed the entire, before the pandemic, people were free to move around. Now they are not. They are addicted. They are locked in a single room or maybe in a home, and they feel sick. And because of this drinking, the addiction, drinking habits, and these things are on a rampant rise. So this is something which again going to affect the relationship between individuals, may it be with a spouse, may it be with partners, with your children. So soon we are going to have relationship counselors who will be specializing only in relationships, how to handle your relationship, being
Right.
being so active, or being keeping this your lifestyles. So this is another area which I foresee. Other than this, the another kind of challenge or another kind of counseling which would take place is that how to work from home. Now, everyone are aware about work from home, which is very common nowadays. So again, work from home requires, in fact, it has increased the number of hours online. It has not decreased. It has increased the number of hours online now. From 8 hours, it has gone to 12, and those working for 12 hours have gone to 16 hours. And people literally have to switch from one meeting to another meeting. It creates anxiety. It feels as if you are not valued if you are the one who are being organized. For example, Anchita is organizing this one, and if I have another urgent meeting online, I'm going to say, Anchita, I have to just got another meeting there, so I'll just leave the meeting in between. That creates a lot of issues. I mean, that gives a lot of devaluation to that meeting or to that individual or the group of individuals. So this is another area which is upcoming, and it's really interesting for the students to take up.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That is definitely insightful. I think I'd like to quickly add in before we move next, and there are a lot of questions I would like to pick up. The area that fascinates me the most, and I think is definitely one of the upcoming areas in psychology, is behavioral economics. When I talk about consumer psychology, the field of behavioral economics basically talks about our everyday choices that we're making. It is resulting in progressive understanding of human behavior, wherein it combines psychology and economics together. Somebody asked that question in the chat box. So, psychology, economic statistics together. You look at consumer psychology, you look at behavioral economics. We kind of agree that there's no right or one way that we can look at psychology. And just to kind of answer all the questions here, two, three of them that I saw, psychiatry and psychology are two different things. When I talk about psychiatry, it's medical sciences that I'm referring to. We take up a degree called MBBS and then move towards a specialization called psychiatry and do a master's in that. The basic difference would be that we are definitely looking at psychology as humanities and sciences subject both. So we go forward and complete a degree called BA or a BSc in psychology after you have a commerce or let's say a humanities in your 11th and 12th, right? Other questions are also being answered by the team members, so please go ahead and do that. Um, Next question, where we actually talk about, there's a lot of discussion about how much psychologists earn, right? And are there enough job opportunities? So I would want both of you to quickly walk me through this and give me your perspective on this. Are there enough job opportunities in the field of psychology, as psychology usually is not considered as a very high paying career? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'll speak first to the opportunities. And there is actually a lot of opportunity. There's been a number of studies done in many different countries, including the US, that shows psychologists and the need for such is growing at quite a fast rate. In fact, much more than the sort of general increase that we see in all job opportunities. So just to give an example, the World Health Organization recommends that there should be approximately 3 psychologists per 100,000 population, so 1 lakh. In India right now, there's approximately 0.07 psychologists per 1 lakh people. So there is a dearth of psychologists in India and mental health professionals in general. So there is a great and dire need for more psychologists. Now that really refers to the mental health side, right, in terms of treatment. Beyond that, of course, there's all these other disciplines and domains that we've just spoken to. And so I do think that there is a lot of area for growth and a lot of opportunity. And there's been a number of studies that show, particularly in low and middle income countries, the need and the number of jobs available for psychologists is expected to increase dramatically in the forthcoming future. The last point would be with the pandemic. I know Mr. Dhaval talked about this, but there's been quite a few studies at this point that have shown that the number of people with anxiety and depression has approximately doubled since the start of the pandemic. So it's really had a big psychological toll. And not only that, but as we begin to reemerge from the pandemic, that can also cause its own anxiety. There was just a recent survey done by the American Psychological Association, where 49% of respondents said they were nervous, they were anxious about going back out in the real world, particularly having those personal face-to-face interactions, right? Actually meeting people and not simply talking to them through a video screen. And so I do think that with the COVID-19 virus, if anything, that's just increased the need for psychologists. I'm actually going to let Mr. Dhaval talk about the income. I know the US income quite well. I don't know it quite as well for India, so I think he could probably better address that, if that's all right.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Derick. Mr. Dhaval, you want to add something in this?
Yeah, now I'm going to say that psychology will be used in almost every field. Let me just quote about in my marketing field, where as an admission counselor, we arrange 3 weeks of psychology counseling program, a fast track program. It's called Career Counseling Certification Program. It's designed particularly for those admission counselors who are going to counsel the students, going to counsel the parents for the student's career. So I'm just looking at the kind of, I'm just comparing it with the education field, that it has tremendously pushed everyone to undergo a training of a career counselor. Now, let me give an example of our students. Now, number of students who are coming to us, they want to go ahead with a psychometric test, which they have to go through to understand their strengths. Now, just a year before, or maybe before pandemic, if you let me consider that out of 30,000 students who apply to the university, hardly 1,000 or less than 1,000 students used to go for this kind of test. Now, last year the number increased to 10,000, and this year the number has dramatically increased to 15,000. So this number itself speaks a volume about the things that people now have started taking the things in right direction which we were looking for. So this has given a tremendous growth to all the fields related to psychology, and new positions, new job profiles are being created, especially in the university arena, where we used to have a single counselor for for a strength of around 1,000 students. Now we need to have one counselor at least for 100 students. So this situation is going to give rise, this I'm just talking about of Parul University. If we just look at the bigger picture about the state and maybe about the country and globally, then I can assure you that the next coming years, psychology will be one of the preferred options, and it might become a compulsory subject in most of the disciplines, may it be marketing, engineering, may it be aviation, but this will become an obvious part, a mandatory subject in the coming decade. So this is what my take is.
I am so glad you said that. I'm really hopeful for that day to come, that psychology becomes a mandatory subject and every student gets to study it. Few questions.
Can I make one quick point, which Mr. Dhaval kind of hinted at, but I want to emphasize, and that's the idea of interdisciplinarity. And so we're sort of talking about psychology as existing in its own little sphere. But there is actually a lot of overlap with psychology as relates to other fields. And psychology can play an important role, whether that's law or art or business. We talked about behavioral economics earlier. And so I think it's important for the students to understand that although you may get a bachelor's in psychology, you really have a lot of options in terms of what you could pursue if you wanted to go on for your higher education. Because ultimately we're talking about human behavior, right? Trying to understand who we are and how we operate. And that knowledge, the skill sets that you learn as a student, can really be applied to a lot of different disciplines. And so there is a lot of sort of areas for growth, and sort of be adventurous and see what works for you.
Absolutely. And I think that you've actually covered the next point that I actually wanted to bring up, that psychology is not just about clinical psychology or a counseling psychology, and that's not just the scope of it. You have so many domains that we just talked about, right? Whether it's cyber psychology, whether it is, that, there was something, Professor Day, I was reading today was about engineering psychology that we were talking about, we were reading about, right? And there are so many upcoming areas that you can actually look at. Now, students who have been asking this question, how do I decide which masters or what domain of psychology should I go ahead and specialize in? What masters should I pick up? Please make sure that you have taken enough practical exposure and experience. You've gone through various internships, done a lot of research papers here and there, pick up different courses. Make sure you have taken the exposure of different fields and domains of psychology before actually stepping on and saying that, you know what, I'm going to be a clinical psychologist because that's exactly the way out. No. A lot of times we end up picking up a specialization right after our bachelor's, and that's exactly where we get stuck in after completing our master's, because now we have absolutely no clue. Right. And this is a common problem. This is a problem that I think most of the students face. And then there is a question about, that I have done my bachelor's, Anchita, in, let's say, law or in some political science or economics, and now I want to do my master's in psychology. By all means, you can go ahead and do a master's in psychology. Make sure, as this is a personal suggestion, please make sure you read up on the basics of psychology before you step into master's, right? You at least should be very, very aware about the curriculum the master's program is going to offer you, because you will be now deep diving into the subject. It's not going to be just general psychology for you. Also, there'll be a lot of tier 1 and tier 2 universities which will expect you to have studied a few papers in psychology in your undergraduation. So just in case if you don't have papers in psychology, or your discipline of bachelor is completely different from what you want to be able to do in your masters, then please go ahead and take up an online course, or probably take up a diploma in psychology, and that's how you can proceed to do a master's in psychology as well. Moving ahead, and I think we're almost past half time. So let's just understand, and I will now kind of open this particular question. What are the key skill sets that are required to become a psychologist? And also help me understand, can these skill sets be developed through practice? What are your thoughts on this, Professor Derek?
Well, first, yes, absolutely. Any skill set can be developed through practice. And if I can kind of combine this with your first comment, as a beginning undergraduate student, you do not need to know what you ultimately want to specialize in, right? The whole point of college is to expose you to those various disciplines so you can figure out, what gets you excited? What do you want to do? That's the whole point, is to get that exposure and that experience so you can decide how you want to move forward. Now, in terms of skill sets, I think there's a few. One, of course, would be the ability to think critically. Writing skills are certainly important. But that thinking critically is really paramount. And it kind of goes back to the idea of psychology being science, as we talked about earlier, right? It's not wishy-washy where, I think this or I think that, right? That's sort of, quote, common sense or intuition, right? We think this for no particular reason. But psychology is here to determine whether that common sense or those intuitions are actually correct. And so to be able to critically think through an issue, meaning to be able to reason and use sort of that rational part of your brain, is really absolutely critical. Writing is something that I think is also a very important skill. Is something that we will be emphasizing in our school, because ultimately, whatever you do in psychology, there's some sort of writing component associated with it. And then it really does sort of come down to where you ultimately want to go with your career. So most psychology programs will have some sort of research methodology where you're going to learn about experimentation. You're going to learn how to design an experiment, how to collect data, how to analyze data. So that will involve some statistical skills. There's also the qualitative side, where you may learn about textual analysis of archival data, for instance. And so I think that there are a lot of skills, both interpersonal, so being able to understand other people. Emotional intelligence is a good example of that. where people that are high in emotional intelligence, they sort of have this ability to understand the emotions of others and their motivations and their drives and why they do what they do. So that's certainly a good skill to pick up. So is what we call intrapersonal skills. So being able to understand your own self, right? Well, maybe I want to procrastinate, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that. One of the real challenges for a college student is to be self-motivated, to have that drive to do what needs to be done, even on those days when you may not necessarily feel like it. And so I do think that there are a whole series of skills and just simple learning, knowledge that you're going to acquire in terms of basic psychological principles and theories that, again, sort of inform us in terms of how we operate as people. And all of that can be utilized and applied to yourself, both at a personal level for yourself, your family, your friends, etc. But hopefully you can also apply it to your professional life as you move forward with your education and your career.
Absolutely. I think that's a very, very valid point. Um, Mr. Dhaval, I would want to pose a different question to you now.
Okay.
Do you think that the entire pandemic has made people realize the importance of mental health and the role of psychologists? Do you think now it's become more evident? If you could like just explain that to me.
Yeah, you let me start with an example. There is an online application called Your Dost.
Your dose.
And yeah, I
Yeah.
will start with that because this is an application which is used by a maximum number of our students.
Mm-hmm.
And what has happened is that recently the students, when they start making calls to this application, some of the notes have been shared back by, we have been tracking them. And we got to know that for the reasons they have been calling, these reasons never existed before. I mean, just imagine that they have been calling to your dosa informing that, I'm not able to longer see my friend. And sometimes they call saying that I'm seeing my friend after so many months and I'm feeling uncomfortable because of COVID, I cannot go closer. I mean, the social distancing actually has created a lot of stress. I mean, we as humans, we were considered having a social, I mean, civilized society. So we are never used to this kind of social distancing. So this has created, I mean, this is trying to restructure the entire human behavior. So this pandemic is really creating the change in the human behavior. And if this cycle continues for another 5 years, then I'm afraid that we would be very uncomfortable to stay in physical limits.
Absolutely.
This is the first point I would like to stress on. The
Mhm.
second one is the usage of virtual products,
Mhm.
whether it's a virtual seminar, whether it's a virtual teaching, virtual learning. So it is going to disturb the kinesthetics of an individual. They will never be able to feel, they will not be able to touch. So this is going to create another challenge
Right.
because you won't have a difference when you are holding a cricket ball or you're holding a solid object. That is going to create a confusion. The new kind of behavior is going to exist and the new kind of problems, complex more problems will arise. So I
Hmm.
feel the need of psychologists in the coming decade, as I mentioned earlier also, is going to increase. And as mentioned by Professor Derick, it's going to increase dramatically, and this what I'm sure about. And so all the universities, institutions, schools, they will have to have a psychologist, but again the counseling would be online, I'm afraid.
Right. Absolutely. I think, yes, with a lot of online and no physical touch, no human touch, this definitely has taken a toll, and we are constrained in physical spaces. That brings me to, let's move ahead with questions related to our university, right? And what I am referring here is about uh, what are the programs that your universities offer, and what is the eligibility criteria related to psychology programs? Professor Derek, let's start with you.
Sure. So as I said at the outset, we are a new school. We are welcoming our inaugural batch of students this August. And so in terms of eligibility, um, obviously CBSE is no longer. So what we'll be doing is once the students register, they'll have to take what we call the Jindal Scholastic Aptitude test. So it's a test administered by the school. They're required to
Mhm.
get 60% or above on that. We have a couple of
Right.
rounds of interviews. And then ultimately, they most likely will get admitted. I should note that for any that are interested in my school, and I'll share the web address with you at the end, we do need students to kind of move forward because for scholarship purposes, we need to have students registered by June 30th for them to qualify. So if I could just tell you briefly about our program. The way we've set it up is we have a series of core courses. And a lot of these are what we've already talked about, Anchita. So those basic domains of psychology. So all of our students are going to be exposed to these sort of topic-based courses. And again, that's going to be everything from developmental and cognitive to forensic and industrial, education, psychology, so on and so forth. We also have a course on analytical thinking and critical writing, as we talked about, or excuse me, academic writing. We have a couple of sections on statistics. We have 2 on research methodology, so a quantitative and a qualitative.
Right.
And one of the things I think that makes our school a little bit unique is at the end of the second year, our students will select between one of what we're calling tracks of study. And so we have 3 tracks of study. This will be experimental / forensic, number 1, counseling education, number 2, and industrial organization, number 3. Okay. And the idea is that by this point, by the end of the second year, the students should have a pretty good idea what they're interested in to some degree. And so during that final year, they're taking courses based on electives that we have within this area. So they can select the elective courses that they want based on one of these 3 tracks. And the goal here is to give our students really broad but deep knowledge during the first 2 years, but during the final year to allow them to really tailor and customize their courses based on their own particular personal and professional interests. In addition to that, we of course will have internships that our students will do, practicums for our courses, and this is all really sort of there to take that learning from inside the classroom and bring it out into the real world. And then, as I mentioned as well, we do have an emphasis on research. So we have some research centers. We will be opening up an experimental laboratory. And so that's one thing I think that will slightly distinguish us from other universities in India, is that real emphasis on research itself. And again, that's partly based on my background and really wanting to bring that to the fore here in India.
Perfect. I think you've given me a very holistic answer. You've summed up 3 questions together. Thank you so much. That was very crisp and clear. So students, please take a note. Jindals have a Scholastic Aptitude test that they will have for your BA program in psychology. And you can visit their webpage to find out all the other details as well. Once you clear the assessment, and then you go forward for the interview as well as the program. Mr. Dhaval, the floor is open to you. I think you wanted to present and share something about the university and the curriculum. Would you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I would like to share the video if you don't mind, or a PPT would be fine. Or regarding the curriculum.
Right, I'm okay with either.
Okay, this video is actually a general video of the university. It would take around 8 to 10 minutes. Is that fine?
Right, we have good 15 minutes.
Okay.
So you can see where is it that you would want to spend more time on. We can go ahead with either, whatever you're okay with.
Okay, so I'm going to share the screen. So
I think we can play the video for 5-6 minutes and then we can move to the presentation. Yeah, okay, that's great. Thank you. In the meanwhile, the questions that I have on the chat, I appreciate all of you asking very interesting questions. If you don't have a BA degree in psychology, can you do masters? Yes, you can do masters. There are a lot of universities who ask you for papers in psychology, so make sure you check the eligibility criteria before going for it. Most of the universities will take up an entrance exam for master's program. With respect to questions from internships, please make sure, yes, internship is the most critical aspect of psychology as a profession. So please make sure you do enough internships before you step into your masters.
Can you see the video, Anchita?
I can see your screen, Dhaval. I can't see.
The screen has started?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
You do not require biology for opting for psychology as a subject at undergrad. So even if you've not studied biology at 11th and 12th, it's completely all right. You can go ahead with your bachelor's degree. No problem.
Yeah, for our own school, you can come from any stream. Again, we really are going to provide the knowledge for you once you arrive. A little background knowledge is always a good thing, but you don't have to
Right.
have much.
Right. Applied psychology, Vidushi, is more application based. Like for an honors program, it will start from the theories and the basics of psychology and the schools of thought you will study, right from what Freud started with, where did it come from, and all the other pioneers in psychology. For applied psychology, to be very specific to domains in terms of application of the different schools of thought. So that's on the applied psychology. You can also go ahead and check the curriculum. Mr. Dhaval, anything that you're facing problem with? Should I help you out?
Yeah, actually, I'm just trying to share my screen and see if the video is getting played. Can you see the folder right now where the video is?
I can see the folder, yes.
Okay, when I click on playing it, does it play or not? Just help me out.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't work?
No. I think should we, is it a good idea if we move ahead to the presentation?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that would be fine as well.
Right, okay. Questions with respect to BA and BSc psychology difference. There's hardly any difference in India. There's no difference as such in terms of the curriculum for BA or BSc psychology. It's almost the same. So don't worry about it. You can do a MA or MSc in psychology, definitely. And different programs, different institutions offer different specializations. So that's also fine. Skill building is going to be the essential aspect, Avishak. That's correct. No, Mantasha, it doesn't matter. What matters is what you've done in your undergraduation. What does your profile look like? How do you portray your interest in psychology? What kind of internships you've done? What kind of research papers have you written? All of these things will matter.
Can I add one point to that as well?
Sure, sure.
That a lot of students aren't aware of. So when you go on for a master's or PhD program, there's a couple of things that they're looking at. One is your transcript and your grades, of course. They're going to look at your CGPA, but
Right.
also letters of recommendation, which are really,
Right.
really important. A lot of students don't recognize that. So the point is you need to get to know at least a couple of psychology faculty members that know you on a personal level enough that they can write a good letter on your behalf. Now, any professor can write a very brief sort of perfunctory letter, but ultimately, if you really want a good letter, which is critical, again, the faculty member really needs to know you. So it's a good idea to start nursing and nurturing rather those relationships, at least beginning in your second year.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Mr. Dhaval, is there anything that I can help you out with? I see a little issue here. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Okay, the presentation I'm trying to share showing an error in the document.
Would you want to instead, meanwhile, if there's an error, would you want to talk about the program that Parul University offers in
Yes,
psychology?
yes. So we have a bachelor's in psychology,
Right.
and the bachelor's in psychology, as Professor Derick mentioned, it's a 3 years of program, and the minimum eligibility is a passing for applying the program. And once the student applies for the program, when we accept the application, we ask the student to go for a small online test on our
Right.
testing platform. And once they go through with the testing platform, we arrange a small interview, which is again online. It can be on WhatsApp or it can be on the Zoom session. And soon we declare the merit list.
Right.
And in the merit list, some of the students might also get 100% scholarship in tuition fees. According to the merit and the scores, there are 100% scholarship in tuition fees. Under study in Gujarat, we have a tie-up with government of Gujarat. And under study in Gujarat, we are promoting the education in the state through the state government, and there are quota of 100% scholarship, 75% scholarship, 50% scholarship. So these are the three kind of different categories of scholarship under which the students can apply.
So, any specific eligibility requirements, Mr. Dhaval?
No, for all the CBSE students who have completed their 12th graduation, actually completed their 12th, can apply for this. We do not have any cutoff marks to apply for this particular
Okay.
program.
All right. And what about the internship opportunities at the university?
Okay, that's a very beautiful question what you have asked. Currently, International Students Affairs Cell has highest number of interns working as an admission counselor with us. We have close to 50 students from different nationalities. I would rather say we have 50 students from around 15 nationalities working as an academic admission counselors and as an academic counselors. For the admissions work, we have close to 10 interns, 5 boys and 5 girls, who are working as a who are working for the benefits of international students, who are looking after the hostel management. They are looking after the food courts what the
Right.
university has, the sports facilities taken. So all this has been taken care by the students.
Right.
And in total, we have close to 235 interns in the entire university.
Okay.
So this
That's
is
great.
something very interesting thing which I wanted to share with you, and it's a very good question, rather. Is my PPT visible to you
Yes.
now,
Yes.
Anchita?
It is
So
definitely.
yeah, this
Go
is
ahead.
one of the. I mean, this is one of the iconic monumental gate of the university as you enter into the university. Uh, Okay, I'm sorry, I skipped one. So these are the number of students Parul University recruited in the year 2020 and 2021. Since we are overlapping the entire admission year, we have students from Germany, we have students from Russia, Egypt, Indonesia. So including students from Gulf, Taiwan, Fiji, and Bolivia. In addition to our students from around India. So we have close to around 55 plus nationalities, and currently, we have 1,400 plus international students who are residing in the city. 50% of them are residing in the, 70% of them are residing in the hostels, that is on-campus accommodation, and the remaining ones are staying in the nearby areas. So this is the broader outline of the university's achievements recently. Last year, we added the students from these countries. These are the countries who are contributing major numbers to the university. I'm going to skip it. These are this are our visits to different international schools when we reach out there, and you can see that one of this student in the yellow t-shirt is our intern in Mauritius, in a country called Mauritius. And here, a student in his yellow coat is a student intern in Zimbabwe. Actually, we have a program called Parul University backed Global Student Ambassador Program. It's followed on the lines like you have a Google Student Ambassador. We have a Parul University Ambassador in Zimbabwe, in Mauritius. They were recruited in their grade 11. So these are some of the pictures there. These are the scholarship certificates what the student receive upon their completion of test. These are the two types of scholarships which the university has. One is called PU scholarship. Another one is the study in Gujarat, which I mentioned to you. These are some of the international exhibitions we have conducted, studying in Thailand and different countries in Cambodia, in Gulf, and in UAE. This is one of our intern group, as I mentioned to you, that we have close to different interns from different nationalities. We have captured some of them here along with our domestic students. These are the countries which have contributed majorly to our international community at the university. We have close different size of students. We have close to 26 students from Thailand, and the rest of the other students comes from different countries. So in total, 56 countries. These are our admission timelines, which I just would like to share. We started in 2014-15 with 109, and fast forward in 2020-21, we have 1,200 plus students. These are some of the testimonials of our students from different countries, mostly from the Germany, students of BSc Public Health. They have applied here. They are currently studying with us. We have students from Russia. She's into fashion designing. Student from Bahrain. We have in forensic science. Student from Bolivia, who is here for nutrition and dietetics. Bolivia is in South of America. And we have student from Fiji Island for hotel management. Then student from Syria for fashion design and technology, from Indonesia for law, for Taiwan, chemical engineering, Egypt for computer engineering, and Somalia for business administration. So these are the awards which we have received last time. 2 awards in last year for the highest nationalities and the best university for internationalization of campus. This is state-of-the-art infrastructure. I'll just skip. This is one of the best hangout places for photos. I love PU in the campus. These are one of our classrooms, what we use for teaching. These are the libraries. We have redesigned it as per the millennials. Then we have hostel facilities for the students. We have this infrastructure like swimming pool and sports facility and the gym for students as well. Some of the campus is very green, lush green campus. Students will enjoy. These are hospital and for MBBS students. Merchandise store at the university. This is the food court, what I was been talking about. Students love to hang out here. The chocolate room is there, Cafe Aptitude, many more. There are many more here. So I'll just skip back. So these are the facilities, and later on, these are the future strategies, which I'll skip it again. We have been dealing with different community leaders in different countries. We have a group, a consortium of parents and teachers. Then we have education loan available for international students in countries like Tanzania, Mauritius, and Zimbabwe. And over and above, we have different payment gateways like PayUmoney, EasyBus, and Stripe. So students from different parts of the world can make payment easily. And these are few of our branding platforms. Where these again are being done by students. Embassy Connect and e-newsletter. Students, they themselves do these activities. And we, along with the education, these are few of the international accreditations what we have from Namibia, Zimbabwe, ACU, the Association of Commonwealth Universities. And we have International Medical Affairs Cell, where medical tourism is being taken care. Parents and Teacher Association in different countries, along with alumni chapters we have in different countries. And this is the program what I was talking about, the Parul University backed Global Student Ambassador Program. We have termed it as PubGap. So this is an academic way. Whenever a student comes, we go with the orientation program, physical, virtual handovers, online classes on Facebook, health insurance awareness. These are some of the pictures of our students who recently came to the university. And these are the different cultural days celebrated at the university, including Christmas, different days. And this is the annual cultural festival called Doom, where the different nationalities, they participate. So these are the challenges faced in the pandemic. That's all from my end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dhaval. That was indeed very crisp and very. I think all the students have got a very good understanding about the university. Thank you, Professor Derick, as well, for taking us through the program as well of your university.
Well, if can I take 2 minutes and just quickly
sure,
share
definitely.
So, can you see me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. So as you mentioned, I am affiliated with OP Jindal Global University. So we are one of the top ranked in the world QS rankings. This year, we were, for the 3rd year in a row, the #1 private university in India. In 2019, OP Jindal Global University was recognized as an institution of eminence by the government of India, a very prestigious nomination. And so, here we go. So if anybody is interested, again, the website's here, jgu.edu.in/JSPC, and I would encourage you to go online. All the information on the school is available. And if you're interested and simply would like to follow up and get more information, Ms. Simran over here on the right, you could either call her or contact her directly. And so we are quite excited. We just actually had our first faculty meeting this last week. So again, new school, new faculty, we're all really excited and roaring to go. So I hope some of you will check us out, and maybe we'll see you in the fall.
Definitely. Thank you so much. And the students who have seen that, I think we've all the university links for Parul as well as with the Global University have been posted in the chat box. You can refer to that as well. So you can go ahead and look at the university's website. Now, coming towards the end of the webinar, my heart is full. I'm so glad we talked about psychology. This is also, I'm a little biased with respect to psychology because this is something very close to my heart. Thank you so much for bringing in very different insights. We've got insights from research, we've got insights from the marketing domain, and how psychology. Now, I just want to bring to the table and kind of summarize this for all the students is that psychology is not anymore a subject which needs to be looked at in isolation. You are just not going to be restricted to being a clinical psychologist or a counseling psychologist or XYZ. You have multiple opportunities available, whichever area you feel most comfortable with, whether that's economics, whether that's statistics, whether that's mathematics, whether that's sociology, whether that's sciences, whether that's management for that matter. All the areas of psychology can be combined with each and every profession in each and every field wherein you have human behavior. Whether you talk about media psychology or engineering psychology or anything for that matter, there are certain areas definitely that I will definitely bring it up, which are not very widely available in India. Something like a criminal psychology, wherein you'll not find a lot of institutions offering it, or a forensic psychology at a master's level program, and you might have to look at universities abroad as well for that education. So these are definitely things that you need to keep in mind. Please make sure there is enough amount of work that is done to gain more exposure with respect to research, with respect to understanding. And one primary skill set that people usually ignore in psychology is that it's an easy subject. It's not. So I'm just bursting the bubble for you here that it's not an easy subject. It's dealing with something as different as human behavior, which will vary right from one person to another. And that's the beauty of psychology, right? So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm sure we were not able to cater all the questions that you've asked us. So don't worry. Get back to us. Write to us at hello@mindler.com. You've got the contact details of both the people from the university as well. Also, I know there's a lot of distress. There's a lot of tension and confusion amongst all of you with respect to what to choose, what masters to go for, which program and undergraduation. Now the exams are not happening, and there are so many other elements that are coming to play. How do you take a decision? There's so much anxiety around. Don't worry, we've got you covered. Please write to us, get in touch with us. We will be more than happy to have you on board and help you in every possible way. And I promise, on behalf of Mindler and each and every career coach that I have here at Mindler, that we will walk the journey with you. So please write to us, and we'll be more than happy to have you here. So thank you so much for spending your time and evening today, and have a great weekend. Thank you so much to both of my panelists. It was definitely a pleasure hosting both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here. And just to kind of echo what you said, it's a great topic, guys. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I still love it as much today as I did that first time I cracked open a psychology textbook as an undergraduate. So I encourage you all to follow through if you have any interest at all. My school, Mr. Dhaval School, wherever you end up going, we wish you all the best of success, and please stay healthy and safe.
Thank you very much, Professor Derick. Thank you very much, Anchita, for a very interactive session. And I really liked it. It's one of going to be the best